Good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins, and this is Train Aficionado Live. And welcome to this edition. We're talking about railroad scanner feeds, how to set them up through Broadcastify. So that's going to be tonight's topic. We're going to be talking about the great benefits of having it and how you should be able to do it. So definitely thank you so much for joining us. Of course, I'm Jonathan Higgins, the host of Train Aficionado Live. So for this hour, we're going to talk about that and also answer your questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to post those in the comments. We'll address those towards the end of the broadcast. Let's take a look at this evening's slideshow presentation, shall we? So starting an online railroad scanner feed with Broadcastify is tonight's topic. Of course, the ever so famous BC125AT in the photograph there, and of course the BCT15X. Those are the two radios that we consistently say are great for railroad scanners to be able to monitor the rails. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about that 15X tonight. So let's continue on with the slideshow presentation here. So, those of you that have been waiting for hats and all types of cool things with hats, we've got them all covered. We've got the snapback, we have the traditional dad hat, we also have the knitted hat with our logo on it, we also have the trucker hat now. So we've got so many different options. It's embroidered, as you can see right there on the screen. It's right front and center. That's our trucker hat with the white and the blue color, which is really cool. And then, of course, we have all of our t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hoodies. So we've got all types of stuff new in the store right now, so definitely check it out. trainaficionado.com, and then click on the store. That'll help you to support our show. We'll definitely greatly appreciate that as well. So great to have you on tonight, and we appreciate everybody joining us. So let's continue on with some more information. So we covered the moving of the Hamilton Depot a couple weeks ago. So check out a time lapse of the main building, the original building, the single-story building, which was moved from the original location up the street in Hamilton, Ohio. We actually have a whole bunch of footage that we shot for the move as well. We'll be putting together something in the relative near future. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on the channel as well. Train Aficionado Live airs opposite each and every week of the Scanner Guys. So Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube. Of course, Train Aficionado is on the YouTube channel. The Scanner Guys are on the Scanner Guys channel. So some great stuff we're going to be talking about this evening, and we're going to be talking about starting your own online railroad scanner feed with Broadcastify. Many of you know about Broadcastify because it's a paired up sister site of RadioReference.com, where you search out frequencies and so forth. Broadcastify is where all the online scanner feeds live. So let's get right to it. What makes for a good feed on Broadcastify? So there's certain things that you probably want to consider before you decide that you want to start your own scanner feed. So let's take a look at the next slide here. So what makes for a good scanner feed? Well, of course, lots of activity on the radio. When you're listening to those railroad channels in your house, you want to have one, really good reception, really good signal. Two, you also want to be near a junction or a yard or a hub. Me being in Cincinnati, Ohio, I'm right next to a major, hub for Norfolk Southern and CSX, and even for Genesee, Wyoming, kind of feeds into the 2 yards that are right behind the historical Cincinnati Union Terminal. So lots of radioactivity on the radio. So that definitely is a help. Also consider busy corridors. Like if you live anywhere along the Northeast Corridor, there's going to be, of course, some passenger service, maybe some freight service on there. I can tell you, for example, when I was living in Massachusetts, on that stretch of the Northeast Corridor running from Providence, Rhode Island, all the way into Boston, you had the MBTA, you had Amtrak, you also had CSX, and then you also had the Providence-Worcester Railroad. So you had a lot of activity there with lots of different railroads using the corridor. So that's definitely the big thing. So as we bulleted the last thing, and I've kind of said it a couple of times, lots and lots of activity is definitely the key thing. You want to make sure that you have lots of activity for people to listen to. You also want to make sure that the signals are really clear. You don't want to put up an antenna and put up a scanner feed and it's all scratchy. What you want to be able to do is definitely maybe put up an antenna on the outside of your home so you can get some decent range. You want to make sure that, people are able to hear an audible, clear radio transmission versus a lot of static. If your feed has got a lot of static, it's going to annoy the listener, and they're probably not going to stick around and listen to the feed. A lot of times with these feeds, a lot of people listen to it for enjoyment, just like they would with their scanner in their home. They may be listening to your feed because, they may be reminiscent when they lived in the Cincinnati, Ohio area or in the Boston area. And they want to be able to listen to the rail traffic as they did when they lived there. Or the other way we use a scanner feed is to be able to preview what the radio traffic's like if we're going to be going out to that area to rail fan. So that's another indication you can kind of get by listening to the online scanner feed. Let's say you're listening to one that's out by Altoona, Pennsylvania. You're going to get an idea of how much activity there is, whether it's busier at night or busier during the day, what days of the week are kind of busy if you listen to the feed a lot. So a lot of great things with the feed. Certainly, these are great points to consider. The scanner. All right, so let's take a look at this. So basically, we need a really good scanner for a feed. So what I recommend is the simple and affordable one right here, the BC355N. It's a bit of a pill to program. I'll kind of say it like that. But it's simple, it's affordable. It has an external speaker jack on the outside and the back side of it. The thing is, this radio will be dedicated to the feed. You're not going to be able to listen to this radio independent from the feed because it only has an external speaker jack. I'm going to explain why the 15X is more of a beneficial radio. So this jack is an external speaker in the rear, so you basically plug in a cable, a stereo cable, from this jack to the microphone jack on your computer in order to set up the audio feed. Now you're going to have to do some adjustment to the sound because you don't want to make sure that the sound is not over-modulated for the feed. Once you've got that set, you want to leave it pinned on that position on the volume knob. You don't want to move it up or down. You want to leave it exactly the way it is. So, when it's broadcasted out over the Broadcastify feed, it's not over-modulated. So this is an inexpensive scanner to be able to set up a feed. My preferred choice is a scanner with a record jack. What we're showing tonight is the BCT15X. You can see the blue arrow at the view on the back showing the record jack. Now here are the benefits of having that record jack. One, that record jack keeps the audio at a level that's appropriate. So it stays steady. Two, it's independent from the volume knob. So if you bump that volume knob up or down, it's going to have no effect on the feed. So you're basically doing your adjustments for the audio on the computer alone. Once you have them set, it's perfect. Now the other benefit of having this record jack is you can, let's say if the scanner is set up in your shack, in your room where you listen to your scanner, you can turn the volume up and listen to this through the speaker built in on the scanner or through an external speaker. As you can see, there's an external speaker jack there, and it has no effect to the Broadcastify feed, none whatsoever. Basically, it's using this record jack just for the feed. The other internal speaker or external speaker is independent. The only thing is when you're done listening, turn the volume down just so when you go to bed, you're not going to be hearing the railroad feed all night, and it will continue broadcasting out as normal on the railroad feed, So basically, I would recommend something like this. A lot of us may have some older radios kicking around, such as a BCT15X or a 15 or a 996 XT or P2, or a radio that has an external record jack. These radios are great for this. Now, the other thing, when you're programming those channels, you need to enable record on each one of those channels. So that allows that audio to travel down the record jack. So that's very handy. Hopefully that all makes sense to everyone. I'm trying to break it down nice and slow for you. But yeah, the record jack is definitely a key thing. Allows you to be able to still use your scanner to be able to monitor it in your home and, of course, broadcast it out. So it still serves as a dual purpose. The only difference is don't turn your scanner off at night because you'll turn off the audio for the feed. As I mentioned, some of the scanners with the record jack, we've got the BCT15X, and of course the 996P2, which is a lot of overkill. So, it's digital. I mean, if you're running anything that had NXDN, which is the digital preferred format for the railroads, then you would do the 996P2 with the NXDN upgrade. Other than that, I would keep to the analog side of the house on the current scanners, such as the BCT15X. For past scanners, and you got a few of these, or you're able to purchase one used, the BCT15, which is the original 15, and then of course the 996XT and the 996T. And then any other scanner that was in the past with unit and had these record jacks. So certainly keep that in mind. The computer. Now, many of you probably have an old Windows computer laying around that you're no longer using. Certainly consider that something of a used old computer that you may not be using. When you're installing the software for Broadcastify, it's not a huge program, and it's not going to take up a lot of the processing system of the computer. So an older computer is fine. Let's say you've upgraded your old desktop computer and you've got it sitting around. This is a great item to be able to use for a feed. It's very simple. It doesn't take up too much of the computer's operating system to run a feed. Even a lot of questions we get, what about the bandwidth? Does the audio feed take up a lot of bandwidth on my internet connection? No. It's a low a low bandwidth feed. It's not going to be like you're streaming out 4K 24/7 out of your house. Like 4K is the next thing up above HD, what you're watching tonight. So an older computer would be fine. If you're not sitting on an older computer, there's tons of these what they call Nooks or mini PCs. This is one, this B-Link mini PC goes for as low as $200. It's a small little computer. Basically, you just need a couple of USB connections, a microphone jack, which is key, and basically away you go. Connect this up to a monitor, connect up a mouse and a keyboard, and connect up the audio cable to the computer, and you're basically all set. So pretty simple. The other thing is Raspberry Pi. If you've heard of that, it's not of course it's a pie you can eat, but it's also a little computer that you can build, which is called a Raspberry Pi. There is instructions on Radio Reference on how to be able to set up a Raspberry Pi in order to set up a feed. So that you're going to need a little bit more expertise and a little bit more technical in order to be able to do something like that. So, of course, older computer, the easiest. If you don't have an older computer and your heart is set on creating a railroad feed, you can look at one of these inexpensive mini PCs or Nooks. If you're technically savvy, Raspberry Pi is the other way to go. I mean, there's lots of options to set up the feed. You don't need anything too fancy. You don't need to spend $2,000 on a high-speed computer. A regular everyday PC would be fine. Here's some of the things that you may need for your setup. Currently, I actually worked on a Broadcastify feed for the Cincinnati Railroad Club. And they actually have a computer in their office that's streaming out 2 of their railfan cameras. So, of course, their microphone input jack was being used for the camera feed. So I purchased one of these USB stereo card adapters that have a microphone and a headphone jack. In this case, we only need the headphone jack. So I bought one of those, and I also bought the stereo cable, which is a 3.5 mm male to male stereo cable. And in this case, it has a right angle, which is really nice for plugging into the rear of the radio. You don't really need the right angle, but you can. So basically, these are the 2 things that I purchased to be able to do this on their computer. Of course, if you're just using the computer for the feed, you're probably not going to need the USB stereo card. You can just use the regular the microphone jack that's on board, or the input in. Some computers actually have 2 inputs into the computer, an input in and also a microphone jack. If you're lucky enough, you can pick and choose whatever jack you want to do. Programming cable. Yes, if this scanner, for example, is at your grandmother's house, or in this case, at the Cincinnati Railroad Club's office, you may want to connect up a programming cable and maybe install something like Butel software and some software to remote into it. So this gives you the ability to remote into that particular scanner, do some programming changes, of course, and then, be able to check on that feed as well. So lots of different things there. And the one other thing you can actually do with some of the software is with Broadcastify, you can actually stream not only the audio, but the alpha tags, the text tag display. So they'll be able to see Norfolk Southern Road or Norfolk Southern Dispatch or Yard or whatever you may have programmed into the alpha tag. So that's another thing you can do. It's a little bit more setup on your end. If you're using something like the 15X, that'll be ideal for doing that. It will display the alpha tags, or even a 996 or one of the versions of that as well. The sign-up process. So the sign-up process is relatively simple. I'm going to show you that right now. So first of all, Broadcastify doesn't want you streaming any SWAT channels or detective channels or anything major. For us, with the railroads, we don't have detective channels, SWAT channels, or case-sensitive channels. As you can see on the form there on the screen, narcotics, detectives, car-to-car, there's none of that with the railroads. So basically, when you're filling out this form and you're setting up a railroad feed, you're going to put a check box in each one of these. Same thing with fire rescue, no hospital to ambulance communication, and so forth. And then you're not going to stream, of course, any federal, like the FBI or any of those alphabet law enforcement agencies. And then the other thing there, you see, you're not going to be broadcasting AM, FM, or TV audio, or you're not going to be hosting a talk show or anything like that, so you're going to check off all those. And then, of course, you're going to agree upon, allowing any breaking news or whatever it may be, statuses on there. And, of course, you understand, everything that you've agreed to. And then once you do that, you would basically certify the feed. Once that's done, there's a little bit more work. So one, you want to make sure that there's nobody else presenting a feed in your area. That's a good thing. You don't want any competing feeds, and you don't want to be broadcasting out the same thing that somebody else is already doing in the area. You want your feed to be unique and different. So you need to come up with a good name for that feed. For instance, the one for the club is Norfolk Southern CSX Tower A Radio. And then basically the feed is located in the Cincinnati Union Terminal. So what they're going to request, of course, is what type of feed. As you can see on the left side, it says public safety. There's going to be an option for railroad, so you'll select that. And then what you'll do is you'll select the country, the state, and then, of course, the county that the feed is in. You'll then create a description of the feed, a name of the feed. You would put that in there. And then you would put in what equipment are you using, like a BCT15X, whatever radio that you're using. You're going to list the equipment. The other thing that's helpful for the Broadcastify folks to approve the feed, they want to see a list of the frequencies that you're going to be streaming out. In this case, the feed is highlighting the yards of Norfolk Southern and CSX. So I've included all the frequencies there. And not only that, I also included, the AAR railroad channel as well. So you can see the list of the frequencies there and who's on it, and the railroads that are feeding in to these yards as well. And then, of course, came up with a description of what you'll hear on this feed. So the information that you provide needs to be detailed. This will be able to expedite your feed being able to be approved. The other thing, too, this is going out on their website. Make sure you proofread it. Make sure it's punctual and correct. Make sure there's no spelling errors. You want to take your time when you're writing this out to make sure, because somebody's going to physically look at this and they're going to see whether or not you've taken a decent amount of time to write this up or you just threw it together. So make sure you take your time. And definitely, I can't stress enough, the name of the feed. You want the name of the feed to be short, sweet, and to the point, basically saying what it's all about. In this case, you want it to make sure that it makes sense, what the feed is, and where it's at. The streaming software. So there's been a couple of different options. When I was setting up the Cincinnati Railroad Club's feed, there was a couple of different options available. I ended up choosing the ProScan option, which is right here. It's a radio feed by ProScan. It's free software. Yes, it's free. It's very simple to use. This is the screen and what it looks like. So what you end up doing is you log in using your username and password. Now, once the feed is approved, you would log in with your username and password. If you do have multiple feeds, you would select the feed that you're going to be sending out at this particular location or on this computer. You can also have multiple feeds running on the same computer. You have to be using separate sound cards, and that takes a little more setup. So basically, you're going to select in the software client, you're going to be selecting the actual feed that you're streaming out, and you're also going to be selecting the audio source. So you're going to have to select those two things. As you can see here, type of streaming service, it is radio reference. And then you're going to log into here with your username and password. Once you do that, your feed or feeds will populate. Next thing you'll do is you'll go over and you'll pick the input sound device. So you'll select that sound device. If it's a single scanner feed, you're not doing a left-right split. You just do a mono mode. You don't need to do stereo. And then what you're going to do is you're going to adjust the audio. You want to make sure that in the software that it's not hitting all the way up to the red. Basically what that means when it's hitting all the way to the red, it is getting distorted. You don't want that. You basically want to stay within the green and occasionally hitting the yellow, not peaking all the way up to the red all the time. If that's the case, you're going to turn the sound down on the software by using the little sound bar. You can see there the box there on left and right. If you're running mono, you're just going to adjust that one and you don't need to adjust it. It's going to adjust it all the way. And then once you're done with that and you've got everything set up, it's just simply press connect. The great thing about the software, if the internet does drop out, it's going to try to reconnect every 10 seconds. So if your internet goes down, what the software is going to do every 10 seconds is going to check for an internet connection, and as soon as it's able to, it will reconnect on its own. So the software is pretty good. You probably want to set up some software to remote into this computer. Like I said, if it's at your grandmother's house, or in this case, the feed that I set up is at the Cincinnati Union Terminal club office. Basically, I'll have the ability to remote into there and be able to adjust the feed if needed. So that's a great thing about it. So using something like this Scan software is certainly simple and easy to use. All right, that's everything covering how to set up your online railroad scanner feed. Let's dive into some of your questions and comments. So I know some people asked a couple of questions here, so let's take a look at those. So Let's Go Rail Fanning asked, do you get better signal when it's cold outside? Believe it or not, when it snows and you have a snowstorm, sometimes you'll get better reception. A lot of people are staying put at home, so the RF floor kind of drops and you get a little bit more distance. I can tell you, for example, we had a pretty decent snowstorm where they basically told everybody in Ohio to kind of stay put, don't be out on the roads. So I was listening to the scanner and I noticed I was picking up defect detectors that I don't normally pick up. So that's kind of a great indication to be able to hear those defect detectors from different locations. So I was jotting them down, trying to figure, oh, where is this one? Where's that one? Because a lot of times, you're going to be able to get a defect detector within a certain range. There's one that where I'm at in Hamilton, Ohio, is about 10 air miles from me, and I'm able to pick it up from here. And then there's one that's just south of Glendale, and I'm not able to get it. It's in between Wyoming and Glendale. If you're familiar with the Cincinnati, Ohio area, there's one over there, and I'm never able to get it. But the day that it snowed, I was actually able to get it. So weather can play a huge role. The other thing that I recommend to some of the people that watch the scanner guys is the leaves are gone off the trees. That plays a huge role. You'll notice that your reception's better during the winter and then in the peak of the summer. Foliage is out, full foliage. You think of basically, it's another layer that your reception has to go through. The signal has to go through. Take, for instance, if I've got a scanner right here and I'm using this antenna here. So it's got to go through this wall and then whatever else it has to go through to get to me. For example, when I always say when putting an antenna on your home, you want to go up and out and up high. So basically, you're going to, have that higher up so your scanner's not having to contend with a lot of barricades in the way. For instance, this wall and so forth and so on. So yes, reception plays a huge role. Dale, funny comment there. I think Ohio people can drive in the snow. From what I understand, the people down south, they shut the whole state down. So it's pretty bad. I would say, like a dusting of snow down in the Carolinas tends to shut the whole state down. As for here, they drive just as nutty as everywhere else, probably. I'll leave it at that. Do you know a website that shows someone how to set up a feed without using Broadcastify? So that software there that ProScan has, I believe you can set up your own feed, but I think your computer then acts as a server. And that's something that I haven't done, but that's certainly something. I'm sure there's videos out there. I should try to experiment at some point and try to make my own feed without having it go through Broadcastify, just as an experiment. So if you guys are interested, you can try setting that up. I mean, that should be something that would be interesting. I'm not too sure if there's any videos out there on how to do that, but certainly I can kind of look into that and maybe make something out of that. Sorry, I'm just looking over at some of the questions that are over here. Les, hey, Les, I saw that you were on the Scanner School. So I saw that. I have to listen to the Scanner School broadcast. I saw your name. I said I recognize his name when my buddy over at the Scanner School, Phil, was promoting it. I said I recognize that Les guy's name. So that's super cool that you were a guest on the Scanner School. Let me take a look at another question over here. Radio reference. So that's interesting, Les. So you heard on Radio Reference that Uniden was sold to an American company. Have I heard anything about this? I haven't heard of anything as of yet. So that should be interesting. I hope if that is the case, they remain, keep manufacturing scanners. Unfortunately, Whistler has been silent on the scanner front, so I haven't heard of anything new on their end. I know Uniden hopefully has some things coming down the pipeline. I know that Bearcat Joe, that frequently watches the other show, is teased, some sort of announcement. So clearly they've got something up their sleeve at some point. If they were, I'm hoping that they stay competitive and continue to produce scanners. Rick asked about his SDS 200. If you add a favorites list on your PC with the Sentinel software, do you have to update the whole database or just the favorites list? So what I'm going to recommend when you create, I know this is like a scanner guy's question, but any of you guys that own like a database scanner such as a Home Patrol, 436, 536, or SDS 100 or 200, first thing you want to do before you create your favorites list, you want to update the database. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to make sure you have the latest and the greatest database in there in case you're pulling frequencies or talk groups, what have you, from that. You want to make sure you're pulling the latest and greatest. So when you write to the scanner, you're going to write the favorites list, and two, you're going to write the latest version of the database. So you definitely want to do that. I would strongly recommend before you do any work with creating favorites lists, you update the database and then start your work and then write it to the radio. When you write to the radio, you want to make sure you're writing both the favorites list and the database. And there's a checkbox that you can check off for full rewrite. And you want to make sure you check the settings for anything regarding current favorites list or overwriting them. There's other options there. Just read through it. It'll pretty much make sense from there. When monitoring medium waves during a snowstorm, it seems there's less atmospheric noise. Is that possible? Is the same as VHF? Yes, I would definitely agree with that. I've noticed too, when I was living back in Massachusetts, the Mass State Police were on a 800 megahertz trunk system. So what ends up happening is during snowstorms, I would get further distance, and that trunk system would never sound so good during a snowstorm. That's another thing too, is the 800 megahertz worked great during a trunk system. And you would think it would work the complete opposite. And the other thing, I used to have Nextel, which operated on the 800 megahertz, and that used to work better too. Being on that side of the radio per se, that worked better. Rick came back with a meaning uploading the changes to the scanner. Yes, it's going to update the database, and it's going to update the favorites list. If you're reading from the scanner, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. I'll say reading from the scanner, it's going to read the favorites list only. It's not going to rewrite over the database within the software, if that makes sense. It's only going to, when it reads, it's only reading the favorites list, and then you're going to edit those favorites lists on the physical scanner. Hopefully that makes sense. Another question here. What can I do if my 436 swivel on the back gets loose? I just took it off before I lose it. So are you talking about the little stud on the back, Todd? The stud on the back, I believe that's a little screw. And I think with the 436, it's plastic. Mine, I actually have it off on my SDS because I use the case. So I got this on here, and in order for me to use this case, did I take it off? Hold on, I'll take a look. I know my 436 I got it. No, I got it on here. So yeah, you can see that I have mine on here because of the case, because of the battery being larger. It actually takes up a little bit more space up on the top. But yeah, this here is just a screw to hold it in, and then basically, if that gets loose on the inside, I'm thinking it's threaded, and there may be an issue with that. I'm not too sure what can be done there. I mean, you would have to send it in to Uniden for repair if it's some sort of issue like that. But do you really want to spend that money to send it in, or just, maybe get a case for it and do something like what I have here? Les is absolutely right. Fog does some strange things to reception. Yes. I remember when I was commuting into work, and it was a foggy day in the summer. So there was a radio station which they're known as Kiss 108 in Boston. It's basically a 107.9 on the dial. So I was driving into Boston listening to that radio station, and it was cutting out. And I was picking up Bridgeport, Connecticut, Weeby 108, which is on the same frequency. It was completely wiping it out. And this was during a fog event during the summer, which was pretty crazy. So yeah, fog certainly does a lot of interesting things there. Let me just scroll up here and take a look at... did you know Danny was in Ohio rail fanning for his birthday? Yes, I saw that on his YouTube channel. He's planning on coming back to the Ohio area. I would love to meet up with him. I've actually spoken to him a couple of times on this program. So I'm hoping, to be able to reach out to him when he's back in the Ohio area, maybe meet up with him and do some rail fanning with him. I mean, that would be pretty awesome. So yeah, definitely we're hoping to be able to do something like that. Carmen mentions on this day, 54 years ago, on February the 1st of 1968, the New York Central Railroad and the Pennsylvania Railroad merged to make Penn Central Transportation Company, which is a cool thing. And tomorrow, speaking of dates, is Groundhog Day. Now, will he see his shadow or won't he see his shadow? Will we have 6 more weeks of winter, or will we get into spring sooner? I guess Puxatony Phil will be able to let us know that, which should be very interesting to see what happens. Dale, mentions about large bodies of water can play a huge role in reception. Yes, that's for sure. They can certainly help things as well with reception. I'm actually doing a scanner class, and we've talked about flat terrain, bodies of water. When it comes to railroad communication, those things tend to help because railroad communication is line of sight. So things that are blocking you and the train are going to limit your reception as well. Any other questions that you may have before we wrap it up this evening? What I'll do is I'll do a couple of slides before we adjourn from the night. So let's do that right now. All right, so that was tonight's topic. Starting a scanner feed for your railroad delight, as I could say, with Broadcastify. So definitely a really cool thing to consider. Hopefully we've answered a lot of questions on how simple it is. Of course, you can support the channel by hitting that subscribe button right now as you're watching the program. And you can also support the Train Aficionado channel by shopping our store. We've got all types of cool stuff on the shop right now, including new hats and t-shirts and travel mugs and what have you. We also have a brand new video up, moving the Hamilton, Ohio Depot, Part 2. This is the second part of the building, so definitely check that out on the channel as well. While you're out and about on the World Wide Web, check out our website, trainaficionado.com. You can sign up for our Trackside Bulletin newsletter, and you can stay connected to us through our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. So make sure you hit the follow, like, and subscribe on any of our social media. So tonight's topic, of course, was starting a online scanner railroad feed with Broadcastify. Some good questions still coming in there. Let me switch back over. So someone asked, is there a bit of a delay? There can be with a Broadcastify feed. You got to think of how this all works. So basically, the signal's originating from your house, going up to a server somewhere, wherever Broadcastify has the server, and then it gets rebroadcasted out to you. And then depending on your internet speed and where you're at, there could be a little bit of delay or a lot of a delay. So sometimes when you're out there rail fanning, you got to keep in mind that there is a delay. So if you're out there and you're hearing the detector going off, and typically when you're listening on a scanner, usually shortly after the detector goes off, the train's there, you better be ready. Typically, what I recommend when your trackside is using a scanner, these feeds are going to be focused on one point along the line, and it may not be where you're located. Let's Go Rail Fanning mentions it's about a 30-second delay receiving the Broadcastify signal. So best thing when you are rail fanning, use a scanner trackside. The reasons why I would say setting up a railroad feed is, let's say at your house, you're not close to the main line. You may want to eavesdrop in on the line by listening to the feed. And keep in mind, these are volunteers that are doing these scanner feeds, just like you or me, donating, of course, a scanner that's dedicated to it, a computer, a little bit of their bandwidth and electricity. So this is something that volunteers are doing, and there's not a feed everywhere. I remember back in the day when I worked full-time at Scanner Master, they would, people would call me up and think we're a part of Broadcastify, and they would ask, why is there not a feed in my area? And I'll tell them, somebody hasn't, donated their scanner and such to be able to set up a feed in your area. But I recommend you get a scanner yourself, because the great thing about having your own scanner is you're able to control it. You're able to lock it down on a particular channel. You're able to add or remove channels. You can scan as few frequencies as you want or as many as you want. When you have your own scanner, you're able to do a lot more control. And of course, it's by your side. No delay. You're getting radio traffic in the area that you're at versus wherever the scanner is. I mean, take for instance, the scanner could be 20 miles down the road from you, and you're hearing stuff that's going on down there versus hearing what's on the scanner. Steve mentions he noticed that his scanner feed near him is about delayed to anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, depending on Broadcastify versus his scanner direct. So it does vary. Of course, there's a little bit of latency as more people join the feed as well. Just like this tonight, I'm probably saying the end of my last sentence, when you guys are seeing it live. There's a bit of a delay in it because it's going, from point A to point B to you. So definitely a lot of things to keep in mind when you're listening to a feed. Any other questions before we wrap it up? The other thing, I'm looking for more show topics for Train Aficionado. What would you like to see me cover? Of course, there's lots of things, but what can we put into a 30 to 45 minute presentation for you guys? What's something that you would like to see? You can certainly contact me through the website, trainaficionado.com, and let us know. I'd love to hear some of the suggestions that you have, some show that you would like me to cover. I'll be happy to do that. We do have some programming that we're going to be working on for the fall. So we're going to start hopefully shooting it in the spring and summer and then package it up. And then we will have some interesting stuff coming in the fall that you guys may like. So certainly, I can't stress enough, shop our store. I mean, that's going to help fund, some of these trips that we've got to travel out to, to shoot and so forth. So we're looking forward to doing some more of that. Basically, when you're shopping our store, you're helping us put some gas in the tank, to go out to different spots. So we would greatly appreciate that. And as always, I can't stress enough, subscribing to the channel is definitely key, so you get notified in case you do miss a show or miss a video that we've produced. You get a notification for that as well. I'm hoping to get some more guests on here as well, so if you know someone that's interested, or if you're interested, certainly let us know, and we'll see what we can do to be able to get you on. But yeah, I guess that's going to wrap it up for us this evening. I thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you have a safe and wonderful week. What was that? Who works with you on these shoots? Basically, it's a lot of it's on me, and then I also have a person that works with me as well. And they really enjoy doing this, and believe it or not, I've turned them into a rail fan. So it's really cool. We're looking forward to doing this. But yeah, definitely we're looking forward to it. Next week, Dale Osborne, which is in our audience tonight, is actually going to be on the show. We're talking about NASCAR and scanners. So we've got a really cool slide deck for that show. So we hopefully you join us for that as well. That'll be next week on the the 8th. Sorry, I had to look at the wrong calendar. And the 8th. So definitely join us for that. And of course, I've got a class that's at the Cincinnati Union Terminal. If you're in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, you can still sign up for the class. It's under trainaficionado.com. Click on the events. You can sign up for that. And it's Saturday at the Cincinnati Union Terminal, starting at 10 and then ending somewhere around noon. And of course, I'll be there after the class to be able to answer any questions that you may have. Carmen, Steve, Dale, Chris, and Les, and everyone else that's watched this evening, thank you so much for watching. We greatly appreciate, you guys taking some time out of your night to watch the show. We'll catch you again next week. And everyone else that's in the audience that hasn't commented, thank you so much again. We greatly appreciate it as well. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you again next week.